All right, let's put the women and children to bed and go looking for dinner. John Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now as we continue to count you down to the 25-26 college basketball season. Want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Now, as we've been doing here, over the last couple of months, we are giving you different episodes to prepare you and set the table for the 25-26 college basketball season. Today's focus is on 5 questions entering the Big Ten. Now, the first question, is it Final Four or bust for Purdue in 25-26? And to me, that is an absolute 100% accurate assessment of the upcoming season for the Purdue Boilermakers. Now, I will say this. There is a different feel for this Purdue team than the team that Matt Painter had that went to the title game in 2024 and lost to UConn with Zach Edey. Now, why do I say that? In 2023, Purdue was victim to the biggest upset in the history of the NCAA tournament when it lost to Fairleigh Dickinson in a 16-1 upset. Now, why do I say, without hesitation, that FDU over Purdue was the biggest upset in the NCAA tournament's history? Well, it's real simple. That was not the first 16-1 upset in March Madness, but when you look at how Fairleigh Dickinson got to that point, it was unequivocally more impressive than what UMBC did over Virginia. UMBC, a 16 seed in 2018 out of the America East, did not play a Virginia team at full strength. DeAndre Hunter, who obviously was a key part of that Virginia team and a key part of the Virginia team that won the 2019 national championship, was out of that game with an injury. Meanwhile, Fairleigh Dickinson was a team that did not win the Northeast Conference tournament title to earn the automatic qualifier to the NCAA tournament. Merrimack did that, but because of the transition rule, Merrimack was not able to go to the NCAA tournament. So Fairleigh Dickinson did it, beat Texas Southern in the first 4, and then went to the round of 64 where it upset Purdue. Now, I said ad nauseum after that game and throughout the rest of the season, the 23-24 season, that in order for Purdue to exercise its demons from that loss against Fairleigh Dickinson, it had to get to the Final Four for the first time since 1980. And to that team's credit, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Lance Jones, Trey Kaufman-Wren, Zach Edey, Mason Gillis, that team exercised the demons and got to the national championship game and just lost to a better team in UConn. This rendition of Purdue is different. But this rendition of Purdue has, in this climate, an unheard of amount of retention. How much retention does Purdue have back from last season's team that went to the Sweet 16 and almost beat Houston? 86% of its scoring. And Purdue also has 3 starters on this team, 2 who last year received All-American honors, Trey Kaufman-Wren and Braden Smith, who were starters on that team in 2024 that lost to UConn in the national championship game. So if you look at this, and this is really unique in the landscape of college basketball, if you look at this, Purdue has 3 players, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Trey Kaufman-Wren, who really have seen everything in college basketball. You're a 1 seed a couple of years ago, you lose to a 16. You're a 1 seed the next year, you exercise the demon, you go to the Final Four and play in the national championship game. And then last year, you go to the Sweet 16 and you lose to Houston. Now, I look at Purdue as being a team, and Matt Painter has said this on Inside College Basketball Now when he was on the show a couple of weeks ago, that gives Matt Painter his best chance to win a national championship. Now, I, for one, know how much a once-in-a-generation player Zach Edey was. He was the Yao Ming of college basketball. Back-to-back National Player of the Year honors for the first time since Ralph Sampson did it at Virginia in the 1980s. But with that said, I look at the landscape for Purdue this season in college basketball. And it's much more open, at least it seems that way right now in October, than it was for the Boilers in 2024. Why do I say that? You don't have a defending national champion like UConn with the pieces back that UConn had back in 23-24. UConn brought back Tristan Newton from a national championship team. UConn brought back Alex Caravan from a national championship team. And UConn also brought back Donovan Clingan from a national championship team. If you look at the landscape now of college basketball, Purdue is set up to be a step above everybody else that's going to play. It's got the favorite to be the National Player of the Year in Braden Smith. It's got one of the great marksmen in the sport in Fletcher Lawyer. And of course, it has Trey Kaufman-Renn. Now, one of the things that we need to be cognizant of is Purdue is going to look a little bit different up front. And I think if you're looking at what was a weakness for Purdue last year, it was unequivocally the lack of size that the Boilers had up front. And I remember doing a game in December on CBS last season when Purdue played Texas A&M at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and Purdue was bullied by the Aggies because Purdue played with more space on offense. Cam Heide, who has since transferred to Texas, was really in place as a small ball four, but it did not have defensively the size up front that we have come to know under Matt Painter. That will not be the case this year. Oscar Clough, transferred from South Dakota State. He also played for Kyle Smith earlier in his college career at Washington State. Is going to be obviously a linchpin up front along with Daniel Jacobson, who gives Purdue that vintage Matt Painter type big man like we've seen in the past with guys like Matt Harms, like obviously Isaac Haas. There's going to be a lot of size next to Trey Kaufman-Renn up front. But when you look at everything aligning now for the Boilers, you are looking at a team that has an opportunity to stay in the state and go play down the road in the Final Four at Lucas Oil Stadium. That's the goal, to go back to Indianapolis, the site of last year's Sweet 16 loss to Houston, and be in a situation where you are going to be playing in the Final Four. You go to the Final Four for the second time in 3 years. Look, crazy things happen in the NCAA tournament, especially to teams that are heavy favorites and teams that are projected at the start of the season to be the best team in the sport. I've been doing this 20 years. And I have seen teams that, again, rip through the NCAA tournament like a chainsaw through butter and lose in the national championship game, who were expected to win the whole thing. Happened with Duke in 99 when UConn beat Duke 77-74 in St. Petersburg. Duke had a great year. Finished, I believe, 34-2. Lost in the national championship game. Happened also, remember, to the Gonzaga team in 2021 that lost to Baylor. Mark Few was on this podcast a couple of weeks ago talking about how dominant that team was. And think about how we're going to look at that Gonzaga team, even though it didn't win the national championship, when, history continues to play its course throughout the calendar and the years pass. Jalen Suggs and Andrew Nembhard in the same backcourt. Corey Kispert as a small ball four. And, of course, Drew Timme at the five. Sometimes you go all the way to the title game and the best team doesn't always win. And I remember a conversation I was having about this with Billy Donovan when Florida was going for its second national championship in the 06-07 season. And he brought up an interesting point. He said, the NCAA tournament is not always won by the best team. It crowns a champion that is able to win 6 consecutive games. And that's why I'm not going to say that Purdue is national title or bust in 25-26. But I will say this. If you're Purdue, if you obviously bring back 86% of your scoring in this climate, if you bring back 3 starters from a team in 2024 that went to the national title game, Braden Smith, All-American, Trey Kaufman-Renn, All-American, Fletcher Lawyer, All-American, you have to at least get to the Final Four and go down the road and play in a national semifinal in Indianapolis if you feel like you're going to wring out the sponge in 25-26. The second question, as we look ahead to the Big Ten in 25-26, is this. Which Big Ten storyline is not getting enough attention? For me, it is simple. This is the year of the lead guard in the Big Ten Conference. Now, when people are going to highlight the best guards in the Big Ten, they obviously are going to talk about the three players in the Big Ten at the guard spot who earned All-American honors last season. Braden Smith, we've talked about, the favorite to be National Player of the Year out of Purdue. Bennett Sturtz, who is transferred to Iowa from Drake to play for Ben McCollum, who he played for at Drake last season, was another player who earned All-American honors. Then, of course, there's Donovan Dent, who went from New Mexico to UCLA. All three of those players earned All-American honors last season. But the year of the lead guard in the Big Ten goes much deeper than that. And I'll give you a perfect example of the depth there is at the lead guard spot. Jackson Shellstad at Oregon, who is currently out right now with a hand injury, but he will be back. He is somebody who's an all-conference caliber player. Jeremy Fears, back for another tour of duty as Tom Izzo's power point guard in East Lansing at Michigan State. Bruce Thornton, who feels like he's been in college basketball for 17, 18 years at Ohio State. Another guy who is a quality player who could be obviously be a first-team All-Big Ten player. You continue to go down the line and you continue to look at the other players in this league. John Blackwell at Wisconsin, who should be in a more enhanced role this year than he was last year. He's a year older. John Tunje is no longer in Madison. He should be a player that, again, comes to the forefront and could be an All-Big Ten first-team caliber player. Kylan Boswell at Illinois has had a terrific college career, was a major part of the Illini last year making the NCAA tournament. He's a really good player. Des Claude at Washington, a player who put up big numbers at USC, went to the transfer portal, now is going to play for Danny Sprinkle in the Great Northwest. There is so many quality guards in this conference that you have to like, that you have to look at as focal points in this league. I think it's going to be a big time year for opportunities for players in this conference at the lead guard spot to separate themselves. Elliot Cadeau is another one who transferred from North Carolina to Michigan, a top 10 team, a team, again, that has big time hopes in year two under Dusty May. Michigan last year, as we know, won the Big Ten tournament, also was a team that went to the Sweet 16 and lost to Oregon. So think about this one more time, why it's the year of the lead guard in the Big Ten. Braden Smith, Donovan Dent, Bennett Sturtz, Jackson Shellstad, Jeremy Fears, Bruce Thornton, Elliot Cadeau, John Blackwell, Des Claude, so many really good players. Now, the third question, as we highlight, 5 questions entering the Big Ten for 25-26. Who is Purdue's biggest challenger in the Big Ten? I think there's 2 teams vying for that second spot, and it's going to be Michigan and UCLA. Now, Michigan, and this needs to be talked about first because I know everybody wants to talk about what Michigan brought in through the transfer portal and the fact that it added a couple of really talented freshmen. In this climate, and this is why Purdue looks to be a step ahead of everybody else in college basketball, not even a step ahead of just the Big Ten. In this climate, I think you have to look at what people bring back first. Michigan brings back Roddy Gale. Michigan brings back Nimari Burnett. Michigan brings back L.J. Kaysen, who Dusty May believes at times might have made the biggest jump of the returning players from last year. And Michigan brings back Will Cheddar. So right there, you have 4 players who played integral roles in Michigan's rotation from a team that won the Big Ten tournament and lost to Auburn in Atlanta in the Sweet 16. And then you look at what the Wolverines brought in. Essentially, Trey Donaldson is out at point guard. Elliot Cadeau is in. We'll see if that's a wash, whether it's an upgrade or a downgrade as the season goes on. Then, obviously, what Dusty May did up front in the transfer portal in terms of adding big men was an impressive haul. Adai Mara, the 7'3" big man from UCLA, who made a major difference for the Bruins last year down the stretch of the season. Morez Johnson, who not only played for Illinois last season, but also played for Team USA in the FIBA U19 World Cup this past summer. And Yaxel Lendeborg from UAB, who was in an exhibition game loss to Cincinnati last week, put up 31 points and 12 rebounds. So you've got those three front court players and Will Cheddar. And then you've got, obviously, in the backcourt, Roddy Gale, Elliot Cadeau, Namari Burnett, one of the great glue guys in the sport, and LJ Kaysen. Dusty May has, in 2 of the last 3 years, taken 2 different programs, Florida Atlantic and also Michigan, to the second weekend or beyond of the NCAA tournament. Now, UCLA is also very much in contention to be the top challenger to Purdue in the Big Ten. Now, why do I say that? We're going to go to retention in a second, but first I want to hammer home the big point. And this is not meant to denigrate anybody who played for UCLA last season, but the facts are the facts. UCLA likely had the worst power conference point guard play in college basketball last season. Still went to the second round of the NCAA tournament, where it lost to Tennessee, still won 23 games, and UCLA was able to retain 3 players who boast all Big Ten caliber potential in 25-26. Sky Clark, who flourished in UCLA's exhibition win against San Diego State at Viejas Arena, Eric Daly, and Tyler Bilodeau. UCLA also brought back Trent Perry, who I know the staff hopes makes a major jump as he transitions from a freshman to a sophomore. And UCLA redshirted 2 players last year, Brandon Williams and Eric Freeney, who were a part of that program in practice last year and practiced every day. So UCLA has 6 players back from a team last year that won 23 games, went to the second round of the NCAA tournament, and had, again, probably the worst power conference point guard play in college basketball. So who takes that spot at the most important position on the floor? Donovan Dent, one of 6 players in college basketball who earned All-American honors last year. A player who last year had a 40-point game for New Mexico under Richard Pitino. A player last year at New Mexico who led the Lobos to an NCAA tournament win over Marquette and a very, very tough loss against Michigan State in the round of 32 when New Mexico bowed out against Tom Izzo and Michigan State. Donovan Dent's going to be a rising tide in Westwood. Donovan Dent is going to make Sky Clark better, Tyler Bilodeau better, Eric Daly better. All of those players, when they were able to have moments last year of promise, were doing it by initiating their own offense. UCLA did not have a table setter. UCLA did not have somebody who could consistently get into the teeth of the defense and get the opponent into the bonus early. That all changes with Donovan Dent. Now, Donovan Dent last year at New Mexico averaged about 20 points and 6 assists. I don't expect his statistical numbers to be necessarily that impressive. But when you look at the toys he has to play with, Clark, Daly, Bilodeau, he is going to be able to spray that ball around to other people that can put the ball in the basket. A very under-the-radar note, too, in the Big Ten. In the last 17 games of last season, Sky Clark for UCLA averaged over 10 points a game and shot about 50% from 3. He now, as a fourth-year player, is coming into his own next to maybe the best point guard in college basketball, not named Braden Smith. But if there's one major question for UCLA, and it's warranted, it is the 5 spot. Now, with the Daimara's decision to transfer from UCLA to Michigan, it left a void in the middle for Mick Cronin and the Bruins. So there is a dual-prong attack for UCLA right now at center. One is Xavier Booker, who a couple of years ago was a McDonald's All-American at a high school, spent 2 years at Michigan State. UCLA is tweaking his position. He is going to play center for the first time in his college career in the exhibition game against Penn State, against San Diego State. And I know exhibition games and the stats that come with them should all be taken with a grain of salt. 26 minutes, 5 points, 4 rebounds. His backup is Steven Jamerson in what could be a 20-20 split minutes-wise, or maybe a 25-15 split minutes-wise, who the UCLA staff raves about his rebounding, averaged 8 rebounds a game last year at San Diego. UCLA needs 12 and 12 from those two players, Xavier Booker and Steven Jamerson. Now, one thing that I was able to dig up after looking at Xavier Booker was this. He only played 20 minutes or more one time in his college career. He had 12 and 7 against North Carolina last year in the Maui Invitational. Our fourth question is also going to be related to UCLA. And it goes back to Donovan Dent. How much better will Donovan Dent make UCLA? If you're UCLA, and the standard is the standard, and what do I mean by that? Every coach since John Wooden has had to deal with the shadow of John Wooden. Every coach has had to deal with the undertaking that goes with being the head coach at a place that doesn't hang banners for anything except national championships. Every coach has dealt with it. Steve Lavin went to 5 Sweet 16s in 7 years. Ben Howland went to 3 straight Final Fours from 2006 to 2008. Mick Cronin went to the Final Four in 2021. But you are judged as the head coach at UCLA by what you do in the NCAA tournament. And what UCLA did by getting Donovan Dent is gives it one of the 2 best players at that position in the sport. Because I firmly believe Donovan Dent has the ability to be a top 2 point guard in college basketball, along with Purdue's Braden Smith. And as I referenced when I was talking about UCLA being potentially, along with Michigan, the top challenger to Purdue in the Big Ten, the main reason for that is because of Donovan Dent. And he is going to have to potentially score less than he did at New Mexico, but hand out more assists in order for UCLA to be, again, a team that can compete for a deep run in the NCAA tournament. Donovan Dent, again, maybe would be more effective for UCLA if he scores less and passes more. You know he's going to get into the teeth of the defense. You know he's going to get into the foul line. In the exhibition game against San Diego State last Friday night, he drew 8 fouls. He's going to get in the bonus. But the other guys on UCLA, like Xavier Booker, like Steven Jamerson, like Tyler Bilodeau, like Eric Daly, like Sky Clark, they've got to feel the effects of playing with a point guard that can spray the ball around. But I think if you're Mick Cronin now, and last year you were able to win 23 games and go to the second round of the NCAA tournament, and now you're adding a player like Donovan Dent, and I think UCLA again last year coughed up 2 games easily off the top of my head that it should have won. One was at home against Minnesota when it missed a slew of free throws late in the game. And the other was in the CBS Sports Classic against North Carolina at Madison Square Garden, where, again, it had a lead for the entire game and had really, really poor end-of-game execution. That, again, goes back to the point guard spot. I think if you're a UCLA fan right now, the expectation is to win 25-plus games, be a high seed in the NCAA tournament, a top 16 protected seed, and have a chance to go to the second weekend and beyond. Now, Mick Cronin had a run of 3 straight trips to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. 2021, go to the Final Four. 2022, lose in the Sweet 16 to North Carolina. Jaime Jaquez is playing with a blown ankle. I think he shot 5 of 18 in the game. A heartbreaking loss against the North Carolina team that went on to lose to Kansas in a national championship game. 2023, UCLA is 27-4 at the end of the regular season and loses Jalen Clark, the National Defensive Player of the Year, to a torn Achilles in the regular season finale against Arizona. And then in the Pac-12 tournament, loses Adem Bona to the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year to a separated shoulder. And again, this is all part of sports, but if those two things don't happen in 2023, UCLA going into the NCAA tournament might have been my pick to win the national championship. We'll never know. And I think if you look at the makeup of this team, Dent, Sky Clark, Eric Daly, Tyler Bilodeau, Xavier Booker and Stephen Jamerson, Trent Perry off the bench, this team has a chance, in my opinion, to be on par of the level of the teams we saw in 21, 22, 23. Now, what are the biggest keys? You got to get 8 to 10 points or 4 to 5 rebounds out of Xavier Booker. He's capable of doing that, and Donovan Dent will help him get there. And they need Trent Perry off the bench to be a threat to score. 8-9 points a game, much like Denzel Aberdeen did for Florida last year off the bench before transferring for Kentucky. Those, to me, are the two biggest keys. What UCLA gets out of the 5 spot with Booker and Jamerson, 12 and 12 combined, and I'm looking for Xavier Booker to do the lion's share of that lifting. And Trent Perry's got to be an 8 to 10 point per game guy off the bench, a threat to score off the bench. If those things happen, UCLA has a dog in the fight. But I'll say this, Donovan Dent makes this team, in my opinion, a top 16 protected seed on Selection Sunday and a threat to play deep into the NCAA tournament in the second weekend and beyond. And if you are a historian of UCLA basketball, you know that every game matters. And it might matter more for this particular UCLA team if, again, the goal is always to play as deep into the NCAA tournament as you aspire to play. And I'm going to tell you why right now. If you look at the scenario for UCLA in terms of getting to the NCAA tournament and having success, when UCLA went to 3 straight Final Fours under Ben Haaland, this is where the regionals were. 2006, Sacramento. 2007, San Jose. 2008, Phoenix. The NCAA tournament has the following sites this year if you're a high seed in the West region. The first 2 rounds would be in San Diego at Viejas Arena, where the Bruins just played an exhibition game against San Diego State, and the regionals will be in San Jose. For a team that is flying cross-country in the Big Ten, the opportunity to play in those types of environments in the state of California cannot be understated. Last question entering the Big Ten. Who is the sleeper? I am going with Buzz Williams in Maryland, and I've been doing this for a long, long time. And one of the consistent themes, whether it was Marquette, whether it was Virginia Tech, whether it was Texas A&M, was that Buzz Williams was going to put a really good team on the floor. And I think that is going to be the case again in Maryland. I don't know just how good yet, but I'm looking at some of the transitional pieces that Buzz Williams has from College Station to College Park. Solomon Washington, stalwart defender at the 3, came with him. Pharrell Payne, 5-man, major piece of last season's team that went to the NCAA tournament, won a game, came with him. Elijah Saunders, who Buzz Williams on this podcast raved about when we had him on over the summers, is a proven player in college. Played on a San Diego State team again 2 years ago that went to the Sweet 16 and lost to UConn. Played last year at Virginia. At 3, 4, and 5, they've got stability. And I think if you're looking at Maryland, the biggest key to this season is going to be whether or not Buzz Williams can reignite out of Miles Rice, who struggled last year at Indiana, what we saw 2 years ago when Miles Rice was the best player on a Washington State team under Kyle Smith that won a game in the NCAA tournament. Maryland has enough, in my opinion, to hear its name called on Selection Sunday. Maryland has enough to be a part of March Madness in 2026. And if Buzz Williams is your coach, and if Buzz Williams is your orchestrator, there's a better chance than not that he has a dog in the fight when February becomes March. That was 5 questions entering the Big Ten for the 25-26 college basketball season. Want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. I'm John Rothstein, and this was Inside College Basketball Now.